The following is an excerpt from the feature documentary film An American Small Town. To watch the entire film and learn how you can support this important film series, visit www.anamerikansmalltown.com.
New Glarus is named after Glarus, Switzerland. Glarus is one of the cantons. And Glarus, Switzerland, 1843. Hilly area, small little towns all over the place.
When I've been back in Switzerland with people and they look at the beauty of the area, their first comment is, why would anyone leave here?
You never leave your home unless things are bad.
Most people in the canton Glarus worked in the textile mills or had jobs relating to the textile industry.
When the Industrial Revolution came along, many of them lost their jobs. The people came home, moved back on the farm with mom and dad. Here you have a farm with maybe 10, 15, 20 acres max, 4 cows, 20 chickens, and now 6 kids. How could those 6 kids survive on the home farm? So the Glarners, the people in Glarus, decided to form an immigration society to maybe get rid of some of the pressure. Because remember, these people were receiving benefits, welfare.
Finally, the canton Glarus government agreed with this society that something needed to be done.
So why don't we hire 2 guides, go to North America, go to the Northwest Territory, buy some land, and set these people up with farms, because we know the land is much, much cheaper in America.
The government realized that it would be much more beneficial to actually support and subsidize their travel to the New World. They came here looking to survive, find a new life.
These 2 scouts got to New York. They scouted around in the Midwest, down in Indiana, over in Illinois, and finally they got down to the St. Louis, Missouri area. So they were advised to go north to a territory called Wisconsin. And once they got to Mineral Point, they were advised to go east about 30 miles. There were trees there for building their homes, farmland, a stream going by for fishing, setting up mills. This is it. This is what we're going to buy. They purchased this land from the federal government. They got it for $1.25 an acre. So in the spring of 1845, a group of nearly 200 people, men, women, and children, decided to go to the United States.
You're in the middle of Europe. How do you get to North America? There's one river that flows north, and that's the Rhine River.
They went up through Germany on the Rhine River by steamboat up to the Netherlands and at Amsterdam and Rotterdam.
And then from there, Rotterdam to get to North America. These folks were on the ocean for 47 days.
They landed in Baltimore, Maryland.
They didn't know where they were supposed to go when they landed.
They went down the Ohio River by steamboat. And of course, the Ohio links up with the Mississippi because their goal yet was to go to St. Louis.
And in St. Louis, they found that their guides had actually gone to the Northwest Territory. So they went up to Galena, Illinois. And then Mineral Point was the land office, and that's where they found their guides were. And from Mineral Point, they walked.
They walked over to what we call New Glarus and arrived here August 15th, 1845.
They got here in August.
They couldn't raise crops anymore.
When they went by Mineral Point, the land office, they saw the Cornish miners digging into the hillside, because that's why we're called the Badgers. So what did they do the first year? They dug into the hillside and lived and survived. Sure, they built some cabins, but they survived the first winter by hunting and fishing and living a pretty frugal life. But life was still better here than it was in Switzerland, because here they could hunt and fish and kind of do their own thing and survive.
It was one of the more milder winters. That was another fortunate thing.
The following spring, everyone was allotted a piece of land in town, which became the Glarus.
They had to learn farming as they went.
Glory, hallelujah, now. Glory, hallelujah, now. Lord, how she shines so bright. How she shines so bright.
They actually did wheat farming the first 2 or 3 years, and then something happened to the wheat crop.
Wheat crops started failing because of an insect called the cinch bug. Also, the prices went down.
And they started milking cows. Well, 1845, 1847, 1848, no refrigeration. What are you going to do with all that milk? You can't drink it all. You preserve milk by making cheese.
So they were pretty much ready for this man who came from Switzerland. He was a cheesemaker. And he talked several farmers into start building their dairy herds. And he said they would bring him the milk. He would build the cheese factories and make the cheese.
The Swiss cheese industry started here, and the Swiss were the ones who are responsible, I think, for making Wisconsin the cheese state.
People gradually realized that while they couldn't be living in Switzerland, they wanted to keep some of that heritage strong here. So the Swiss language continued. Of course, they were all Swiss people living here together. That was their first language. Newspapers were printed in German and Swiss German. Church services were done in Swiss German.
Where the railroad came to town, the community generally thrived. If the railroad didn't come to town, so many communities would kind of wither away. And the railroad that came here came in 1887, and it was a spur. The engines in those days, the steam engines, would be turned around on a turn style, or turntable, I should say. earlier years, they would have passenger trains too. In 1910, Pet Milk came to town. Once Pet came to town, they could pay more to the farmer for milk than the cheesemakers could. The milk would be sort of cooked, so to speak, and it would evaporate. In World War II, many trainloads went out of New Glarus with Pet Milk because it went to the military in Europe and in Asia, South Asia, and so on. And it really played a big role. Pet left New Glarus in 1962. Now, it didn't hurt the farmers all that much by then because there were tanker trucks. They could divert milk wherever they wanted to go with it. But it did really shake up the village.
In 1938, Edwin Barlow, who was a gentleman who was raised here, spent a lot of time in New York and was involved in the theater in New York. And he came back and he thought, this is the perfect place to produce the Wilhelm Tell pageant. Schiller had written the story based on Swiss folk hero Wilhelm Tell. And he gathered support with folks in New Glarus and said, we're going to put on this pageant. So one of the women's church groups started sewing costumes, and it was done in a glen just on the outside of town, and they put on the Wilhelm Tell pageant in German. Thousands of people showed up, and this then became an ongoing event, and it was done every Labor Day weekend since 1938. Eventually English was added, and each year a few different changes, improvements, things are added to the play, but it continued to celebrate the story of how Switzerland was founded.